For many years, one man engaged in extraordinary activities in the attempt to peel away the many layers from himself, only to ultimately discover that there was but one. One? One? Are you serious? Are you putting me on?
Yeah.
The true origins of religion, philosophy, psychology, uncertainty, and all conspiracy theories. As soon as man could think, the very first thing he thought was, what's going on here? And immediately realized he had no idea. On some of these, should I go back and repeat the title again? Or? Is that why with some people they can't let them go on coffee break? They're away from the job for 10 minutes. They have to be retrained. Now I'll have labor unions writing me. It's not so bad now that you ask me. But well, the worst thing about hate mail is that they never include any donations or any money. One man's holding this secret, deeply grave suspicion that if he could somehow get a screwdriver or a wedge or something in between what he thinks of as his body and his mind and somehow pry them apart, then let them come back together in a new way, that he'd be on to something. Mm-hmm. If you act like an idiot, everyone will believe you are one. If you don't act like an idiot, everyone will still think you are. Another in our continuing So There series. If you weigh your thoughts, they're all the same. If you weigh your thoughts, they'll all stay the same. If you weigh your thoughts, you're stuck with them for life. That's right, Leroy. Wave goodbye to change. Bye, change. A short essay. Once you get on board, you can't hardly ever get off. You guess what it's about. More theories from the city. One guy over there says that doing stuff to try and make yourself more conscious can end up making you less so. Do the city know how to look after its own or what? A brief treatise. Once you buy a watch, you can't hardly ever throw it away. You still guessing the topic? Okay, an even harsher, more disturbing theory from the city. One man therein claims that the, quote, neat thing about being a mystic is that after you've figured out what's required to actually be one, and further realized, shall we say, the extremely slim possibility that you'll ever succeed at it, you can then just move on to helping others achieve it. Is it not cute how easily weekend warriors can be shocked to their socks by nothing more than, can you believe it, words arranged in an order they didn't expect? Even in today's more sophisticated, mentally driven world, while the mythical knight might live by the mind, he still for sure won't die by it. A truncated discourse. Once you start taking it, it's hard to ever stop. By now, I'll bet you know what they're all about. And now for a quick quiz. What happens after you look up a metaphor's dress? It gets all embarrassed-like and leaves town. That's what. And now for the true and complete story of heroes. Only the weak have them. Whilst browsing at a newsstand, a man came upon a book entitled, We Are Not Alone. And his mind thought, boy, you can say that again. Would someday in a metaphysical fit somebody explain to me why we've got lights up and in this hanging? That's what I thought. Today's morality myth. Once in one world, their most conscious being told everyone what was going on with their existence, but no one seemed to hear him. And everything went on just fine. While on a sister planet, the most conscious being there told everyone what their lives were actually all about, and they did seem to hear him, and the whole place just kind of blew up or something. So, let that be some kind of lesson or something to you. Proverb update for the more up-to-date. The saddest words of tongue or pen are those 4 words, I'll think about it. Yeah. Well, as much as I have no personal faith in education either, sometimes it's a shame that more of you didn't get past the 8th or 9th grade, or at least stay awake. Whatever happened to the John... No. We are not going to break the subject of 19th century British, or even 18th century literature. The neural life of agriculture. Looking out over his partially planted fields, a man so mused. You can leave your wife, abandon your kids, even give up the farm. But how in God's top 40 do you ever get away from your own, what you call it? Yes, indeed, words to sow by and damn sure to reap by. Yeah. The simple downplay complexity, same as they do simplicity. Another in our series entitled, Where Do You Go When You've Already Been There? The neural life of haberdashery. There was once 3 brothers who decided to take off their hats. The first one tried gingerly, but failed. The second one tried forcefully, but failed. And the third one, seeing all this, said to himself, wait a minute. One man thought he was demon-possessed, then realized it was just him. Today's pithy proverb for 2. The mind is an infinite fountain. Thank God the stomach's not a bottomless pit. The neural life of nothingness. If there is not somewhere in you the desire to somehow be blank, your desire is not yet on target. To try and rehabilitate the witness on re-exam, the DA asked the rat, is it not true that in some areas you're known as a squirrel? No. For those of you giving good interest to this proceedings, you should transpose this courtroom scene regarding the possibility of name changes for rodents into a hint concerning how the so-called knowledge of man's ordinary mind is knocked about. Marchers enjoy hearing noises from the rear of the parade and will even tolerate some from the front. But as far as anything from up the street ahead of where they're going, forget it. Papa, are there retirement homes for mystics? Well, not as such, son, but there is a place for those who once saw something, then let themselves become bitter and slack. What is this place called, Papa? Everyday existence, my boy. Back to everyday existence. The simple stay marginally sane and stable by their need to act, not any requirement to think. What's the difference in real would-be mystics and fake would-beers? The real would-beers know what to do and the fake ones don't. Okay. Then, what's the difference in real mystics and would-be ones? The would-be's know what to do but can't seem to, while the real ones, somehow, Odin only knows, actually do it. You know, said Fatima to Dojini, hearing stuff like that almost is enough to give you the blues. To which the reply was heard, yes, but me suspects it is but another way you can distinguish those with extreme ears from those with the routine variety. If you're going to live among the civilized, be prepared to have somebody all the time talking to you. Today's inspirational verse sent in by someone or the other. I was sad because I had no gloves till I met a man who had no feet. So I lent him my hands and he gave me his shoes, and if I get any better at this, maybe someday I'll pull both sides of my mind together and be like, you know, a whole person mentally like. Copyright 1995, the IBI Institute. I be inspired. No. Reporters report on the external world, mystics on the inner one. Reporters tell what men did, mystics tell why life made them do it. Once upon a time, the king of one land, who considered himself somewhat of a thinker, challenged the royal floor waxer to pose him a question he could not answer. So the buffeted one thought for a moment, then posed, "How many men on earth have ever understood what life is about?" And his grace then fell into some brief thought, then barked, "What kind of trick question you call that to ask such a grand mind as mine?" And the guy immediately figured he'd probably blown it. Though theoretically it sounds impossible, originality can be manufactured. Well, not actually made from scratch, but all you need is the right combination of what you've got now and goobaceous gobs of uncontrollable, irrelevant grease. Irreverent grease. Originality can be manufactured. Well, not actually from scratch, but all you need is the right combination of what you've got now and goobaceous gobs of uncontrollable, irreverent grease. I knew that would help a lot. There was one man who couldn't arrange his life to be able to follow a guru, so he just took to periodically chasing after a neighborhood garbage truck. Always being extremely careful to run right through that slick spot. Once upon a thing, there was a mystic who was so concerned with never misleading those who sought him out that he perpetually kept an unlisted phone and house number. And just to make doubly sure, he also had no phone or place of residence, which certainly was beneficial for the few who sought him out knowing more or less what they were doing. Simple minds believe that if they know what's going on in the world, they may figure out what's going on with them, which is actually half right if they but had half an idea what they're doing. A guy went to visit a reputed wise man and asked him, "Is it hard to be smart and not take yourself seriously?" And the man replied, "Yeah, but hell, it's hard not to if you're stupid." And the guy realized what he meant, but just for a second, and then he got over it. A fact not visible from city level. No criticism is ever based on comprehension of what's going on. One man was so dense and torpid that they gave him his own newspaper column. Well, hey, that's not so weird. One guy claims to have his own mind. One sloganic view. If thinking don't kill you, worrying about it will. One mystic would periodically make jokes about his lack of charisma and charm, an activity to which a local wag said he was much entitled. No matter how much you beat up stupidity, it'll always bounce back. No matter how bad you cut up ignorance, it'll still survive. And no matter how many shots you fire into ill-founded opinions and foolish beliefs, they'll recover. The only guaranteed method of meaningful attack is the big A, abandonment. Viewed in hindsight from the workaday level, Adam blew ordinary men's chance for future happiness by the simple act of saying that first word. How the sports of mystics differ from those of the city. Ordinary men enjoy playing handball and high-lie, while the few just want to tear down the walls. What? And ruin the whole game? Hey, you, stay out of this. And now, a poem. One apparently having to do with the mind and stuff. Of all the drugs to touch you oughtn't, for some the very worst is Dalton. Yeah. Remember, good citizen, when the language mangler comes to your town, don't hesitate, rush right out to meet him, taking with you any ideas and sausages you no longer care for. More mysteries of the mystics revealed. The secret is in your pocket. Yeah. No, not that one. The other one. Jeez. A big test is to ask yourself just how different you think your life would be if you didn't have a mind. And if you think a lot, you're civilized. On the other hand, those presently sane who can answer otherwise show some promise. In man's intellectual world, there is no such animal as selective irrelevancy. Things not seen with city eyes. Hard work, exercise, fasting, and sedentary meditation all can serve the same end of temporarily wearing out the mind. There are many ways to try and change, but in truth only one change. To say that the way of the mystic is only for the few is not incorrect, but it is also true that the mystical way of forever striving to expand is also the way and real nature of all men. Oh yeah. And this one extraordinary activity used to refer to itself as the school of the unstuck. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, once you realize that life itself is alive, not much can stick to you anyway. There is an idea that is spread throughout the East and West. In the West, it shows up in religious literature that I was going to pull out again to use to show you not only how everything in life is invented in man's intellectual world, in a sense that people cannot comprehend. They, as always, ordinary minds, if they hear that and attempted to give it any credence, they take it as being a critique that I in some way, as obscure as it may be, that I in some way was attempting to sock it to stick it to drill it to life. I'm making some critical comment to say it's all invented. It's invented in such a way that until you see it, you can't see it. And it's invented in such a way that, as I have attempted to show, that everything from science on up or down or sideways is metaphorical, that all talk is metaphorical, that everything that man's mind calls reality is metaphorical. Not in some philosophical sense and not in some rhetorical sense of trying to argue words as to whether scientific laws actually exist as such or whether men just made up something to fit what they observed. It's all invented, including that observation. But beyond all of that, I wanted to show you that people never realize how alive life is, and that you don't really know the secret until you understand, and that you don't even stop and get tripped over the fact you no longer have to struggle over trying to hold back your criticism of life, back your aggression over life, your reaction to how stupid, how chauvinistic, how limited, how parochial in their vision and intelligence are people. People aren't intelligent. They're not stupid, they're not intelligent. People are paid slave labor. People work for life. People work for life, people read life script, and people have no idea. Which is why you cannot get anybody to tell you what they're going to say next. I mean, besides the fact that they can't, you can't even get them upset by it. Yeah. Well, all right, you could get them upset, but if you get them upset, they're not going to learn anything. If you actually got them upset, they'll go crazy. Yeah. And then probably send you a thank you letter once a year on the anniversary of their commitment. Yeah. But back to, I was going to take something I've used commonly known proverbs and et cetera, even things from religion, and have shown you how it could be seen in a more pragmatic, more practical form that I was suggesting to you would, if there was one who spawned the other, it would be the kind of description I was giving, interpretation of certain religious ideas. But I wanted to try to get you to stretch your mind even more, that is any good metaphor, the way it's ordinarily used, the one I was about to pick out is worldwide, can be used and is used and never suspected in the other direction at another level. Whereas the way in which it is used is demonstratively dead end, only is partially crippled or only partially functional, which I'll show you, and yet men will not consider at the ordinary level, since life will not let them. It's no offense to men, but that men, very few men will even hit their head on that corner or that little ceiling, that level, and go, wait a minute, that is great. I really got something out of that for about 2 bars, if you're a musical mystic, or for 2 or 3 pages, or for 2 or 3 years, or 2 or 3 lifetimes, if you're a Hindu. And then you think, well, wait a minute. It quickly runs out of nourishment. All the flavor is gone out of this gum in almost no time. So here it goes. And it has to do with what we've been talking about, believe it or what not. About the wonderful place that thought plays in the intellectual life of man. I'll do the other part. Well, what else is there? What kind of comment's that? Will you just hold on a second? I was just thinking one of the good things of about not being a paid entertainer is at least if you have to do more than one part in the show, at least you don't feel cheated that they don't pay you 2 salaries. Let's see. Here's the idea. Very old, but I'll give you a rough, to my recollection. One from the Holy Bible that says, I believe it was Jesus. If it's not, I know there's a version in the Old Testament even of this. But it was somebody, anyway, he up and says in response to something about give no thought for your life or for the morrow. I'm going to mix it up a little because in other parts of the world there were older versions. And sometimes it just reads, give no thought for the morrow. Don't think about the future. But I believe the Holy Bible version is, give no thought for your life. So I'll put them together. So give no thought for your life or for the morrow. And I'm just putting them all together now from different areas. And it says, look at the beasts of the jungle, look at the flowers in the fields. They do not work, they do not spin, they do not weave. They do not worry about where to find food, they simply live. And so it should be with a true, and then you can fill it in, with a real Hindu, with a true Christian, with a real Jew, with a real believer. They're saying with a real something. Now all religions, assuming you've ever heard it, you heard it from the Western version about give no thought for your life and of tomorrow. Much older than Christianity is not the point, but in other areas and much older and even coevally with it have been people saying give no thought for what's going on. Now, rabbis, ministers, thinkers, ordinary people who are pursuing some public religion, but let's say the apparent leader, a priest, a rabbi, or minister, they take this story and always have, and it fits. So I want to show you it is a true, it's actually symbolism, if you want to get back technical instead of metaphor, because it works perfectly well. They have beat that son of a bitch almost to death. They beat it to shreds for thousands of years. At the level I'm about to describe, which all of you have heard if you were listening at some time in the past, is they say, let's take the Christian view, by you understanding now allegorically to transpose being a Christian to being anything and being a Christian to actually being more conscious. But at the level that they take it, that is something to do. Then if you ask a priest or rabbi, I read this in here that supposedly Jesus or one of the Old Testament writers says, give no thought for your life. Give no thought for tomorrow. And look at the rest of life, the beasts and the flowers, they don't worry about it. Why should you trust in God if you're going to be a real Jew or Christian? And you ask, Father, tell me, what does this mean? And they've continually used it, but now here it goes. Thousands of years, thousands. They've used it to say, well, now, if you're going to try and do something extraordinary, maybe I should use closer to the common terminology, the kind of descriptions they would use, and then we'll expand it. But they say things like, well, if you're going to actually be a good Christian, let's use that one. If you're going to be a good Christian, you have got to have faith in God. You have got to have faith in the supreme powers. And therefore, if you're committed and you say, yes, I'm a Christian, I'm going to pursue this holy way then after that, my son, you should not be going around worrying about life. You're supposed to turn over your fate to God now that you are a Christian and you're a follower of the correct God. Now, that sounds fine. It's an old story. It's a comforting story. Unless, with no hostility, unless you, well, you don't even have to ask. They will finally come along once you get past the age of puberty and you're out there on your own, or at least become a young adult. Then they have to point out, if they're not asked directly, they have to point out, well, now this does not mean, now that you're grown and you have a family and responsibility, does not mean that you sit there at your house and wait for God to deliver you food. You've got to get out there and plant the fields. You now have children. You took on a wife. You're responsible. Now let's play both parts, and we're not talking about someone antagonistic to religion. As always, you know, this ends up inside your own nervous system, inside of one man's head if you know what you're doing, but to make it more verbally malleable, we'll plaque it's this guy talking to a priest or a rabbi, a priest. And he says, well, wait a minute. Why did you make such a big deal? I've heard sermons all my life of attending your church of you saying that one of the true signs, if not the sign, of a true Christian is someone who has absolute faith in the higher powers, in God. And the priest says, yeah. And you go, well, this one sermon, you keep plucking it out of the Bible about give no thought for the morrow, give no thought for your own life. After all, look at everything else on this planet, how beautiful the flowers are, the tigers, look how healthy. They don't worry. Why should you? Why should you, especially now that you have placed your faith, your life, your faith in the hands of God? How can you be less? How can you be doubtful? How can you be less assured of a good life and of a future life than a tiger, than a lily of the field? And you think, you know, that's true. I mean, it makes you feel good until you think, well, wait, does that mean that I don't have to do anything? In other words, there is the dead end, because then the priest has to say, well, no, you can't do that. Now, you can't just go home, not just because you joined our church and because you're living as much as possible by the demands, the physical demands of our religion. Now, you can't go home and sit under a tree the rest of your life and rot. You have got to take on the responsibility of looking after yourself. You can stay there forever, because then you can ask the priest, well, what does it mean? What does it mean? It works, even though it hits a dead end, as always, that all things must reach an inconclusive conclusion that the ordinary mind will accept, or else it becomes self-consuming, it becomes self-defeating. That is, that anything at the ordinary level, as we've been through many times, cannot, quote, succeed. It can actually work, because the only way that can happen is for it to become suicidal. And religion is no more exempt from it than anything else. And no particular proverb or no thought. But if you do not know, I'll assure you one more time, whether you'd heard it or not, it is several thousand years by all known reports, older, the other side of the world, that same idea. It just strikes people of an ordinary religious bent, of an ordinary, probably nowadays even humanist bent to some degree, that philosophically they would go, that's right, a man should not concern himself. It's just almost impossible. You can be an atheist, to stay with a religious context for a second before we spring off of it. You could be an atheist and still find it extremely questionable to publicly question or to challenge the idea contained in that kind of little proverb of don't give no thought for your life or tomorrow, which at first you could argue, but then it goes on about look at tigers, look at flowers, look at nature. You don't see trees and people going, God damn, where will I get something to eat tomorrow? And when you put it that way, even an atheist, if you leave out the God part, or if you leave it in, they are hard-pressed to publicly go, and that's not true. Because there's nothing you can do with it up to that point, except get into some pretty arcane verbal struggle over, well, now wait a minute, man's in a different position. Still, if you go from just that first part of it about give no thought for tomorrow and your own life, comma, just look at everything else on this planet. I mean, there are plenty of animals better looking than we are. Well, I don't mean of you, I'll speak. There are plenty of people, plenty of humans that you've got to admit are probably not as good looking as a good Saint Bernard, a good healthy wolf, a bluebird, some trees are not bad looking, especially flowers look a lot. So just at that point, if you look at it, they do not worry. They have no sense of time. They don't know what tomorrow is. They do not worry where food's coming from. Think about poor little plants and trees. They can't go look for food. They're stuck there. They got to stand there. You don't ever see them going into some sort of fits of depression or anxiety attacks. So on that basis, even an atheist, the guy go, well, yeah. That, something they would accept it to a degree. That you can't overdo worrying about tomorrow. That's the same people that nothing wrong, that they're fulfilling their proper role, that will be out working their little tails off, trying to get ahead in life, and trying to get promoted, and etc. But they say, because you just can't really challenge the idea itself. But notice, it finally reaches a dead end. You've got to have faith in God, as the Quran used to say, or Muhammad did. Put your faith in Allah, but lock your damn door. See, that's what it gets to. That give no thought for tomorrow, but, keep your day job. Keep a paycheck. All right. Surely I don't have to go much further, but you do. Even a mystic, even someone outside the religious area could take that one part, which they've done. You can find traces of this throughout the mystical aspects of all religions, in Zen and Sufism, etc., and Christian and Jewish mysticism, that they have extracted it and even insinuated, if not been able to do much with it, that this has much greater potential. There's much more in here than just saying, don't worry about tomorrow, don't worry about whether you're going to get promoted, or don't worry. It works, which is what true symbolism is. It works as it sounds, which as it sounds, in the beginning, literally, sounds allegorical, and they treat it with a touch of allegory. But they aim it toward behavior. That is, the religions, the priests, the rabbis, people who have repeated it. They treat it as a fact having to do with behavior. Do not worry yourself about tomorrow. To varying degrees. Don't kill yourself. Don't starve to death. But it's still, they treat it as though it is truly something to do with a man's physical life. And it works. Up to a point. That is, I repeat, that people cannot, even those who are not followers of that particular religion or of any particular interpretation, just the idea. A civilized, educated person cannot really, vigorously deny that. They gotta go, well, that has a great deal of poetic truth. I wish my life was arranged that I could in fact live more like that, which is a nice answer. Always sounds like, well, if I wasn't so far in debt, if things were arranged different, hell, I'd be a good Christian. I'd be a Jew. I'd have it down. It's always a nice story. Like, it's not a problem of whether I could, it's just I'm real busy. In fact, I could say, you mean your mind is sort of elsewhere. Yeah. If I slipped it in on them, they'd probably go, well, yeah. But let's don't think about that unless you're... Okay. This is so worldwide, so common. What other possible meaning could it have than some kind of religious, something based on faith? No matter what your religious background, no matter how you try to interpret it, it says, give no thought for the morrow. Give no thought for your own life. That comes down in all religions somewhere to faith. And if you were not religious, why I said that strikes people as being almost bulletproof publicly, an intelligent man would not want to stand up and go, that's just absolute bullshit. You should worry about tomorrow all the time. It has such a poetic ring to it. It moves at such a, if you'll believe there is such a thing, if you'll believe there's an intellectual world, no verbal world, somewhere in there is a metaphorical or a symbolic stratum therein, that it just kind of moves people that, yeah. Whether they can do it, whether they know what it means, is yeah. But what could it actually mean? What would be the purpose of it? Why was it said? Why has it lingered? That has nothing to do with behavior. That has nothing to do with worrying about getting ahead tomorrow. It in fact has nothing to do with tomorrow, speaking chronologically. I'm going to do it again. Because now I've been talking about this for many nights. Give no thought for your own life or tomorrow. Ellipsis. That's the only part we care about. But I've done the rest. Give no thought for your own life, or give no thought for tomorrow. Same thing. What? What have they missed? Give no thought for your own life or the morrow. Well, I've already cut it down for you. It's got nothing to do with morrow. It's got nothing to do with faith. Got nothing with placing your faith somewhere outside you. It's right there in the sentence. The one word that they have never picked out. No minister, no rabbi, no ordinary person, that one sentence. Give no thought for the morrow. Let's just leave it at that. Give no thought for the morrow. Let's say that was the slogan of some real fired up, sincere group of would-be religious people, even would-be mystics, that they just sort of distill it from all the various sources throughout the thousands of years. Give no, whatever the name of their organization, somewhere written in Greek or Latin, is up there over their fancy place. It says, give no thought for the morrow. And that's it. They have condensed it down to the heart of it. And no one has ever picked out the one word in there. Everybody has looked everywhere, and you can run, and you can grab that ball and run up and down the field, sideways. You can go from football to soccer. In fact, people not watching you making believe that you're suddenly playing rounders, lacrosse, according to what part of the world you come from. And they keep running with it, and they never pick up that one ball, that one word out of that little short sentence. Give no thought for the morrow. I should go ahead. I could have made. Give no thought for the morrow. Leave it in the hands of God. 8 or 9 words. They have picked out everything in there, written sermons, all sorts of books, treatises, explanations, commentaries on each and every word in there, other than perhaps the conjunctions and the articles. But every other one except one word and one interpretation of it. Thought. See, here it is. The mind is ready. You say, all right, has everyone brought their mind with them here for this important discussion? Everyone goes, yes. You go, all right, minds on alert. Got them on? Yes. All minds prepared, ready to receive. And everybody goes, yeah. And you go, all right, here it comes, a very important message. And everybody goes, all right, minds alert, here we go. Give no thought for the morrow. Leave it in the hands of God. And everybody goes, okay. You hear little wheels and people buzzing, people that's been thinking metaphorically before and allegorically and other. You go, yeah. You go, what's the key word, you think? They would guess forever. And what's strange, we're talking about 8 or 9 words, and you think, well, surely somebody accidentally will finally guess the one you're talking about. No, it's weird. It's weird. You can give them years, and they'll keep repeating. We'll go, and we'll all agree. Well, there's only 9 words in that. And everybody goes, yeah, and we've done. And somebody, all right, let's start again. So they appoint somebody recording secretary. So then everybody starts guessing. Give, no. God, no. Morrow, no. And so we make sure the recording secretary, she's writing them all down, or he. And so finally get through it, and I say, you're repeating yourself. They're back to God, and etc. And so somebody says, well, Madam Recording Secretary, how many words have we got before we started repeating? And being no slouch, she counts, and she says 8. Assuming I can give no thought for it. 11. 11 words. Give no thought for the morrow, leave it in God's hands. They say, Miss Secretary, how many words have we been through before we started repeating ourselves? And she counts and she says 10. And it strikes nobody as strange. They'll all sit there. And they heard me. They can count that there's 11 words in the idea. And so they say, well, let's try it again. And I let it go, let's say several hours. They go through the same crap, if you can believe this. And they keep going through. Do they start repeating? Let's say this time I sit down and leave the room. They'll finally, one of the people involved go, wait a minute. We've already said God this time, this round, about 4 times, hadn't we? The secretary says, yeah. And they say, wait a minute. Give us a full count again. So she counts again. She says 10 words. And everybody in that room knows there's 11 words in there. And nobody finds it strange that they have tried every word by now, including the articles. The. I mean, as strange as it sounds, they got down to the. And when it didn't work, and nobody knew it would, but still, after a few more minutes, somebody says again, well, did we try the? And I go, yeah, we did, didn't we? And she looks down, yeah, we did the. We've done the 3 times. Nobody will ever come up with the one word. thought. Give no thought, and after that it's really kind of irrelevant. After that really comes a serious kind of cosmic level of an ellipsis. Give no thought, ... But if you start off with the mind, you go back to where I started this little scene. All right, has everybody got their mind? You got it all ready, all warmed up. Okay, here we go. Give no thought for the morrow, believe in the hands of God. Everybody goes, okay. Now I'm going to give you the real useful, the origins of this. Give no thought, ellipsis. And everybody would go, I say everybody. They're being driven by their mind, which in turn is working for that secret employer. I'd say, give no thought. And everybody, and I'd pause, and so that everyone understand this is the key. It's a place for serious contemplation, rumination, reflection. And everyone go, How will we describe pictorially what the mind will do with the idea of give no thought, ellipsis? Let's see. Well, I don't know of a three-dimensional picture better than hot water through a strainer, pork through a goose, charity through royalty. Humility through an attorney. The mind it cannot do anything. If you prep it and say, now watch it, because this is slicky. Give no thought is the key. And I know I chopped it up, so now I'll expand it. Give no thought for the morrow. I mean, there it is. Or give no thought for your life. People, the mind will pick out every possible interpretation of that except the one, the mystical, the useful basis. The basis of it that preceded man being able to talk. Give no thought for your life. And everybody can go, well, all right. But it's got to have some interpretation after that, right? I mean, you're saying something. You're insinuating something. What if there was no insinuation? What if that was the beginning and the end of it all? But, as you'll always note, life, knowing how to deal with man, or at least man proving it through what occurs, it did not stay there. If I'm correct, let's just assume that somebody originally says, give no thought for your life. Thank you, good night. That was the first philosopher, that was the first mystic. You see how well it survived. That is, not at all. Somebody after the first guy said that, the first guy will assume that understood it and said it to somebody. And then it kind of weaseled out, it got out of the tent, they kept repeating it, and it got out enough to where a few other civilians heard it, or a few civilians, and something still struck them. It was almost like the burning bush and et cetera, and the old Egyptian gods that you couldn't really look at it, which is where all those kind of stories do. Are we going to explain every religious myth in the world? Save me. No, they're really great. But all of you know the burning bush that Moses couldn't look at, and the Egyptian stories, and everywhere again is that actual when God himself, the truth shows up, the force shows up, even the best of men, those who might have enticed him to come down, once they glance around they go, oh, whoo. It's not fiery, it's not Medusa, it's so damn blunt they look and it gets out of focus and they have to look away. I mean, first they go, it's God, it's it. And it's like, your eyes went. Where'd it go? Be still. See, because the proof is, I've already given you that story, everyone had one chance. Everyone's already glanced. Everyone glimpsed head to head will laugh once, just momentarily. And almost uncontrollably, you had to look off. So why do you think it's going to be that much different now, years later? At any rate, people cannot look at it directly. And so if the original model of the sentiment, the notion was, give no thought for your life, period. Thank you, good night, drive carefully. And it some way hung around. Somebody wrote it down. It fell by the wayside, and years later somebody found it. A kid walking along, he found it, and it just gave him little tingles. Not real tingles, but little tingles. And so he shows it to his father or somebody, and they think, this is something. This is something. and they almost get tingles, but something's wrong. They look at it. Give no thought for your life. Give no thought for your life. Now think about it. You got an ordinary mind. That just won't do. I mean, the sense makes sense. Give no thought for tomorrow, but that is not called anything you want to. It's not civilized. It's not comprehensible, even though rhetorically it makes sense. It's not acceptable. No civilized, ordinary, intelligent person would ever on this planet accept that as being a workable, a useful dictum, proverb. It's not even colloquial wisdom. Give no thought for your life. It's obviously not true. Because one thing, you could look at, pulling back the stories that Bert and Ernie, Adam and Eve, Punch and Judy, that the first thing they had to do, once they could think, and God threw them out of paradise where they didn't have to think or talk, when they got out, the first thing they had to do was give thought for tomorrow. Because he told them, like, well, you've done it now, get out of here, go to work. You're going to have to now go out and plant. You're going to have to do the very things that years later, the same cultural resource of the Jews and the Christians, that whole area came back with the whole thing about, hey, the trees, the wild animals, the lilies of the field, they don't worry about tomorrow. Of course, humans being what they are with their short memory, nobody stopped and said, wait a minute. If my memory serves more or less according to our family ritual and tradition, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, this same God throughout my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, Adam and Eve, for that very reason, where he got mad and threw them out and says, now your curse is going to be, get out there and work every day, and you're going to have to slave for your own living. You can't walk around now picking up food off of trees, and we got racks of clothes over here, and you don't have to buy them or make them. You're going to have to leave here now and go out and make your own way. Here it is, this fictitious Jew, years and years and years later, going, wait a minute. If that was the curse, now why you come back saying, give no thought for the morrow, look at the lilies of the field, etc. It simply will not do. You cannot say, give no thought for your life. That is counterproductive. That is not tolerable in the ordinary world. Back to my made-up little scene. Somebody discovers this note written years and years later, and they look at it and they study it, and it gives them some sort of little tingle. It has some significance. They just know it does. But something is not right. Give no thought for your life. It seems good, but that period doesn't belong there after life. So if somebody tries a comma, and it's already better, give no thought for your life, you're all right. I mean, it's better. It's improving. And then they think for years and years. But, that sounds good, but. Give no thought for your life, but. Trust in God. That's it. That covers it all. We had to come up with others, but that covers it. After that, they can embellish it, they can lengthen it, and add other things to it to fit the occasion, but they've got it then. That fits. And if it wasn't God, this is not religious. It could have been Zeus. It could have been the gods. It could have been nature. The point is, it's got to be an external force. It's got to be a hero. It's got to be somebody who has your fate in their hands. Fate in their hands. Give no thought for your life, but leave it in the hands of fate. Leave it in the hands of destiny. Leave it in the hands of Superman. Which I know sounds silly, but it's the same thing as give no thought yourself for your life, but leave it to the inevitable. Leave it to greater powers than you. Give no thought for your life. That's awakening. You can't start off there. And you can't tell somebody, well, give no thought to your life. Not an ordinary person, because they would give you as many fits, or worse fits, than a would-be follower of religion would, a priest or rabbi, when they say, wait a minute, I've been hearing you preach on give no thought for tomorrow, and yet you keep wanting me to contribute money here every week. I gave up my job. You're the only thing I do now. I just sit around waiting for things to happen. By the way, they repossessed my car. What's going on? I've been thrown out of my house, by the way. What's going on? They go, no. You took that too literally. Mm-hmm. You got to sort of, don't give some kind of thoughts about your life, and the rest of it you got to leave in the hands of God, but some of it you got to give some thought to your life. It cannot be directly described any more than anything else, but I was going to hint to you, since nobody else is here, that everything described as the liberation of the mind in the Tibetan areas, the great awakening to Buddhahood in the lower areas of that same region, the awakening of consciousness to a higher level. All of that, it's not the only description, but all of that fits the initial, what I'm suggesting you was the original model of this idea that is worldwide of give no thought for tomorrow, but leave your hands in the fate in the hand, leave your fate in the hands of higher powers. Someone who understands, somebody that knows the secret knows everything's in the hands of somebody else. And I don't mean that personally in the hands of God. It knows this. It knows that what you normally do is not in your hands. Only ordinary people, that is, idiots, children, simple people, ordinary sane people believe that. In spite of the fact that you ask them, what are you going to say next? What kind of smart ass are you? What kind of question is that? For those of you that didn't care for the story about the king and the royal floor waxer. What kind of damn question is that, though? What kind of trick question? He put it to the buffeted one. What kind of trick question is that to ask a grand mind like mine? The king himself does not care for trick questions. A trick question being a question that is getting damn close to the obvious. No. All of the awakenings, knowing the secrets, etc., I was going to suggest to you, was also tantamount to the original sentence I was suggesting of the notion, give no thought for your life, or to your life. It is not something that had to be taught anyone who sees it, because there's nothing to think about. Well, all right, Jesus. All right, there's lots to think about. If you're living that kind of life. Or we'll put it another way. Even if you thought theoretically, well, there's not that much to think about, and you're an ordinary person, then I could say, well, in that case, stop thinking about it. And if they had any sanity and intelligence left after that, they would very shortly go, that was a trick, because I can't even stop thinking about not thinking about it. Well, all right, we'll try not to think about it. Maybe that'll help. Besides what you might have gotten out of the last 30 seconds, or maybe sometime in the future, the overall picture I was trying to spread upon the canvas was the fact that that kind of idea, and that particular one, fits the schematic of every religion in the world. It fits into the general framework of every humane, civilized philosophy in the world, at least poetically. And all civilized, reasonable men, without being able to analyze it, to explain it, to defend it, will nod along when you say, you shouldn't be giving all, you might have to add all, but don't give too much thought to your own life and tomorrow. I mean, we're all going to die, all that kind of stuff. They go, yeah. And no one can see what it's actually saying. But at that level, it works. It will inspire people. It will give people a rationale. It will give people who have not succeeded in life. We're not talking about would-be mystics, but just run-of-the-mill, ordinary people who do not feel that they've succeeded in life, which most people don't. It gives them a kind of higher level rationale, explanation about why they never succeeded in their profession, why they never became a recognized figure. It's like, well, you know, we are not total captains of our destiny. That you should just do the best you can. This is repeated outside of religious halls, obviously, but it's repeated that a child wonders, will I ever be a famous violinist? Sometimes I feel like I'll never be as good as my teacher or some of the other people in my class. And their parents or the teacher will say, well, now that's not the way to look at it. All you can do in life is do your absolute best and really practice, try to develop the skills, the method, the technique of the instrument. You have some talent. You know, who knows how far you can go? Don't get stuck now about what will happen tomorrow, what's going to happen 20 years from now. Will you actually get a scholarship? Will you ever play at Carnegie Hall? You cannot do that. You've got to only do what you can now and just prepare yourself now, do your best, and don't worry about tomorrow in the long range sense. That is conventional wisdom. It is accepted, and no one sees the basis of it. They're not supposed to. The real part, after it works on that level, is that people who read it would be people who are interested in doing something extraordinary themselves. Even they refuse. Even they are incapable of seeing what it says. That the first words are what does it. After that, the rest of it is irrelevant. All right. The first full sentence, my original model. Give no thought to your life. Thank you and good night. If you'd like to look at one more way, anyone who ever reads or recall anything you've read of the purported descriptions of mystics in the past that described what happened when they... It's right in there. Even the low level, which they all are, the kind of remembered public descriptions after the fact, but it's all in there. The same direct, hard-nosed, truncated version of give no thought for tomorrow without the comma. Give no thought for your life. Who but an idiot air conditioner, if it could think, would sit around pondering the rise and the fall, the flux and the price of electricity, whether they're going to ever outlaw Freon completely, whether your position is in a front window, a nice window, or back in the back in a shabby part of the building. What machine? What machine with absolutely no aspect of any individual control, if it could think, on top of all that, would worry about the future? It's got no future. It's got no past. It's got no control. Hey, yeah, I'm a man. Not no damn air conditioner.
Yes.
The saddest words, for those of you that didn't keep up with your British lit, the saddest words of tongue or pen are those 4 words. I'll think about it. You don't mean your life.